G'day everyone, this is Zero Organ Laser here for my third deck profile. This is the third current deck that I'm using. I swap and change as I see fit. My Gladiator Beast deck profile has been updated a while back, and I just recently updated and put up my TG Stun deck profile. This is my third deck, and it's a really interesting deck. It's probably the most fun out of all of them, only because there's some really cool plays that I can make with it. But it is also a very anti-meta kind of deck as well. So it does suffer a few inconsistency issues, but it is just so much fun to play. And when you play someone who doesn't know how to play against it, it's just hilarious. It's called Macro, and I think I like to call it my Macro Engine Mash, because I run a few different engines in here that just help me get all sorts of different really cool, interesting plays out. So without further ado, I start off with 2 Reborn Tengus. Ever since it got hit, Reborn Tengu hasn't been as good. Reborn Tengu at 3 was fantastic, but I did notice I used to draw into multiple copies of Tengu, and that kind of hurt a little bit. Now at 2, it does survive. It survives a torrential hit, it survives a tribute, and it's still actually pretty good. I would definitely recommend still running Tengu, and it also acts as tribute fodder for my Monarchs, as I'll show you later on. GenXLI Birdman is really good with Tengu as well, because I can summon Tengu, push it back into my hand, summon Birdman, and then another Tengu comes back from the deck for an instant rank 7, level 7. This is a tech choice, Neospatian Grand Mole. That card is just good for bouncing back. You saw I had a copy in my Glad Beast deck. I have one in this deck as well. It's just great for bouncing back pesky XYZs. Blackwing Gale. See, these are all really good tech cards, you know. By themselves, they're not bad top decks, and they work well in conjunction with other cards as well. Alright, so now up to the first of my engines, the Deep Sea Diva engine. So I run 3 Deep Sea Divas and 1 Lost Blue Breaker. Now, the problem with this deck is sometimes you do draw into Lost Blue Breaker, but that's not a huge issue. Deep Sea Diva is fantastic because when you summon it, you can special summon 1 level 3 or lower C7 type monster from your deck. That includes Breaker, and that includes another Deep Sea Diva as well. So often what I'll do is I'll summon Deep Sea Diva, go into another Deep Sea Diva, and then overlay into Gachi Gachi. Or, if I'm versing a monster that's particularly tough, I'll go into Lost Blue Breaker, Synchro, because it's a tuner, for 5, and go into Catasta. Or alternatively, if there's a spell card that I've been having trouble with, or a trap card, I'll Tribute Breaker by its effect, and it's unaffected by Macro as well, because it doesn't stay to the graveyard, and I'll destroy that spell or trap card. So it's a really versatile kind of engine, and it works well for Synchros, and also for getting rid of spells and traps. So I quite like that. It's really good. It's a really strong first turn play. Next is DD Survivor. This works really well with Macro, of course, because when it's removed from play from your side of the field, it comes back at the end of the turn. 3 is there for consistency. I never usually draw into multiple copies of Survivor. It's only there in case I need some protection. Every turn is basically a turn that your opponent can come back with something bigger. So Survivor is just a constant presence there on the field, and is also great for tributing as well. Now I run 3 Monarchs, and 3 of them are Riser. Now, a lot of people will think, okay, why are you running Riser? Why aren't you running Kais? Well, Kais is technically better, because it banishes a monster, it removes it from play permanently, and it also inflicts 1,000 damage to your opponent if it's a Dark. But personal preference is Riser, because if my opponent has something, say, it doesn't even have to be anything big, it just has to be like a set spell or trap card. I could summon Riser, and if it's not a destruction spell or trap, I can send it back to the top of the deck, and that's basically a whole turn wasted. So that I can poke for 2-4, and the whole turn starts again for your opponent. That's what I like about Riser, because it basically puts your opponent back an entire turn. Easily tributable by Survivors, by Tengus, by all sorts of things. And it's just a fantastic card. And my other engine is the Tour Guide engine. So I run 3 Tour Guide and 1 Night Assailant. Now, I'd run Night Assailant over Sangan as my last Tour Guide target, only because Sangan's useless when Macro's on the field, whereas Night Assailant, it's basically like Man-Eater Bug. It just destroys one monster on the opponent's side of the field. And it's not a bad top deck either, so I don't mind picking up Night Assailant. But Tour Guide's great because it goes straight into rank 3s. I can go into Leviathan, Levier really easily. Levier is a huge player in this deck as well, because all my stuff gets banished and then comes back really easily with Levier. So that's the monsters. As I showed you, like, it's a whole bunch of tech. Quite a few engines there, but it really works really well together. I'm rarely in the place where I have nothing on the field. So, onto the spells. We have Staples, Book of Moon, too hard to pass up. Dark Hole, Heavy Storm. I do run Heavy Storm, only because it's such a good card. I think it's silly not to run a Heavy Storm. Mystical Space Typhoon at 2, only because I find 3 is a bit dead. Double Pot of Duality, because it does interfere with special summoning with divas and stuff like that. I don't want to draw multiple copies of these, and sometimes I don't even want to draw this card, but it is there for consistency as well. If I draw nothing in my opening hand, it's there for a reason. Mind Control, because I run so many tuners, etc., it's just too good, you know. Rhoda reinforces the army to search out survivors. And finally, Two-Dimensional Fishes. Now, Two-Dimensional Fishes used to be awesome, but with the rise of Exceeds and also Insectors, Fish is not as good because it doesn't remove their spells or XYZ materials. So Fisher is run at 2 only because it's a strong first turn play. You play it at first turn, you summon your survivor with ease, and it's there and it causes your opponent trouble, but it's not as troublesome as Macro, so I only run 2. Onto the traps. I have the main player of the deck here, Macro. Macro Cosmos. Basically banishes anything that's sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead. And it is perfect because it banishes XYZ materials, it banishes spells and traps, and it really negates a lot of costs in the game. If this is on the field, your opponent's Bryanak is useless, and Survivor keeps coming back, which is just amazing. However, you do need to protect it because it's a high priority target for opponents. So I run 1 Dark Bride and 1 Starlight Road. I only run 1 Dark Bride because I don't want to dead draw it. Dark Bribe's useless, but not as useless as in some situations. And Starlight Road's great because I can set a couple of cards and not worry about a Heavy Storm. Return from the Different Dimension is great if I can't get Levier. And the look on your opponent's face is priceless when you play this. They think they're in a strong position, and I've got like Blackwing Gale, and say they've gotten rid of my Grand Mole, it's removed from play as well. I'll just return it and bounce Grand Mole back, and then synchro with something for Blackwing Gale. It's amazing. And it really works well. Mirror Force, as I mentioned before, it's just fantastic, and monsters won't get their graveyard effects, so even though people can dodge it with destruction effects, it's still really good. And Solemn Judgment, and 2 Solemn Warnings. And I'm thinking of bumping this deck up to 42, and adding 2 Tarantulas as well, only because Mass Destruction really helps, and Survivors, of course, can come back from that. I'm not 100% sure. A lot of people have suggested that I add in the Cyber Valley, only because it's really great as a draw engine. I'm not 100% sure on it because it seems more of a stall card than anything, and I'd rather get explosive plays off. So I'm going to test out Cyber Valley, but for now, like, I'm coming close with this deck. I'm in the top 4 consistently every week at my locals when I'm running it, so it's definitely working out well. I might try a few new things, but I'm definitely making up to 42 and adding in 2 Torrential Tributes. So that's the main deck. On to the extra deck, which is basically your standard stuff with a few, like, I haven't got, like, there's a few cards that I haven't purchased yet that really make this deck really useful. But the first one is Gachi Gachi with 2 Deep Sea Divas is really great because it bumps up your survivors to 2/2, increases your monster attack by 400. If it's got 2 XYZ materials, it's really quite good. My second is Muza Rhythm, the String Jin. This guy is there in place of Zen Mains. Now, I haven't got my Zen Mains yet. Should be coming soon, but it's there just in case there's a really big monster on the field that I can't get over, and Leviathan is just not going to cut it. So I go into Muza Rhythm. His effect is when it's attacking, when a Jin monster attacks, you can detach 1 XYZ material in damage step, and it doubles its attack. So that goes up to 3,000. It's 1,500 base attack. So it's a really good card. It's not as good as Zen Mains, of course, which is going to go in there, but it's still there just in case. I haven't used it yet, but it's going to be useful, I think, especially when Zen Mains is in there. Number 17, Leviathan Dragon, of course. It's just a really good card to start off with, a really strong first play. 2 Levier the Sea Dragons, which is important because you need to want to recycle your monsters back in. And like in some cases in a long duel, I'll tour guide, but I won't want to go into Zen Mains. I want to go into Levier instead because it just brings back your things. And Levier becomes a huge target as well, so your opponent will devote resources to destroy Levier if they can. For rank 4s, because I run Mind Control, I don't go into rank 4s very often, but it's there. Utopia is there just in case I Mind Control a level 4. And it's quite good, as you know, like there's no need to explain that. Magical Android is a strong target for a level 5 when I've got a Deep Sea Diva and I'm going into say like a Lost Blue Breaker, I can go into Magical Android if my life points are really low. Basically, it increases your life points by 600 every end phase for every psychic monster on the field, so you'll get 600 life points straight up there. And also it's a 2400 beat stick as well, so it's quite good. It's definitely nothing to laugh at. Of course, we have Allied Justice Catasta. I have to pick up another one for my TG deck, but as of now, this is in this deck, because this deck is complete. That card's just great for mass removal as well, like it removes anything pesky, like a Malefic Cyber End, all sorts of things, you know, it just gets rid of them. Orient Dragon. This is a situational card, but you have to have it in the deck, because with Deep Sea Diva and with Survivors, you can make some really cool plays. Like, in one game, my opponent had, what was it? I think it was some really big, I think it was a Vylon Synchro, some really big one from the new Hidden Arsenal 6. And I had a Survivor on the field, and there was not much I can do against it. So what I did was I Deep Sea Diva'd into 2 Divas, ranked 6th with my Diva and my Survivor into Orient Dragon, banished the Synchro, which is its effect. It banishes 1 Synchro monster on the field. And then I used this as a material again to go into Scrap Dragon. So it's quite a strong play. It's quite like a sequential play. You're just removing stuff as you go. And it's a really good card. It's 2,300. It's not easy to get over. Obviously I don't go Brionac because Brionac is dead with Macro on the field. So, I mean, that's also situational. I'll think about putting it in. I'm not 100% sure. Instead, we have Guy Knight, the Force of the Earth. This guy's a great 2/6 beat stick that can't be finished chained. And it's really tough for your opponent to get over as well. So it's a really strong target for level 6. Next, we have level 7s, Blackwing Armor Master, because we have Blackwing Gale. This guy's really easy to go into with a Survivor. And his effect is just so boss. Like, I don't take any battle damage from him, and he can't be destroyed by battle. And if he's been attacked by a monster, you place a wedge counter on that monster, and you can remove it to make its attack 0. So it basically gets rid of really strong monsters that I'm having trouble getting over, which is fantastic. Ancient Fairy Dragon is probably the most common level 7 that I'd make, only because I do that play with Tengu and Gen X Ally, and it's great because I can special summon it in defense mode, 3000 defense, and then use this effect to special summon something else from my hand, so it's quite good. Black Rose Dragon, I'm going to take this out for a Scrap Archfiend, only because I think Scrap Archfiend is more useful. I've never Black Rose Dragon before in my life, because it will always hit my Macro or something like that, so this guy's going out for Scrap Archfiend, I think. And because I run Starlight Road, Stardust Dragon is a must-have in this deck, and plus it's a valid target, especially when I don't have Macro on the field. And also we have Scrap Dragon, of course, probably the best Synchro I've ever seen. Like, it's probably my favourite Synchro. For the for the side deck, it's really for my meta. So it's not a really good, useful side deck for a lot of things, but it's great for the meta. So I run 2 Kinetic Soldiers for the 6 Sams, 2 Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors, even though it interferes with a lot of my card effects, like my Tour Guides, it's still really good against Insectors. Grave of the Super Ancient Organism, I run this only because there is a Malefic Skill Drain running around my meta, and he is absolutely brutal. It's a terrible matchup for me, and this guy basically negates everything. And it also, to a lesser extent, it's pretty good with Chaos Dragons as well. Actually, it's quite good with Chaos Dragons. I haven't tried it out against him, but I definitely should side that in. Okay, Double Chain Disappearance, great against Insectors, windups, things like that. Double System Down. I don't run Cyber Dragon only because there's no space in the main deck, and I'd rather have a spell that just removes all of them. And because I face a couple of Karakuris now and then, and also there's a Cyber Dragon OTK deck running around, System Down is great. Only because Chimera Tech doesn't work under Macro, so there's no point in putting that in. And pay 1,000 life points, banish every machine type monster on the field and in your opponent's graveyard. So it's really good in removal. Warrior Elimination, just a good card to put in against, say, 6 Sams. They'll probably negate it, but it's still good. It's still a good card to draw and debate with. And 3 Exchange, because there is an absolute crazy amount of Exodia decks running around my region. Like, you side this in game 2 and 3 against Exodia, and if they don't get their first turn, kill off, then you're pretty much set because you just take one of their pieces. And it's also, like, I've used it against Final Countdown decks as well, because what I've done is my opponents won the first game, and they think they don't have to side out Final Countdown to go into a burn strategy. So what they do is they still keep their Final Countdown strategy, and I play Exchange first turn, take their Final Countdown, play it against them. That happened once, and basically they can't, they scoop because they're going to stall and then I'm going to win. So yeah, so Exchange is a great card. I'll take it out for probably Anti-Spell Fragrance. It's just more useful in general, but it's still a cool card to have. Alright, so that's my macro deck, my macro engine mash. Hope you enjoy, and rate, like and subscribe.